Have you ever looked at the Gachiakuta art style and thought, dang, I wish I could draw like that? Well, I sure did, and so did plenty of other people, I think. While searching for tutorials on YouTube, I did find some helpful tips to mimic Kei Urana's outstanding style. However, I didn't see much tutorials diving into the construction all the way to the final flares, so I'm gonna do just that. Welcome to one part of hopefully many as I teach you how to efficiently execute the Gachiakuta art style. First things we gotta look at before getting into line weight and all that other stuff is the base, proportions. Every style has a distinct proportion set, such as the Cal art style having very round features and big heads, the My Hero Academia art style with snout-like side profile. I gathered a few character reference sheets from the show so that I could use them for my study. References are super important. While looking at the overall base of a character, you can see that there are some identifiable aspects that you can add into the artwork. So, for example, we can look at the proportions of the head compared to the rest of the body. Now, we also see that the clothes are very oversized as with all the other characters, so it could be hard to see the silhouette, but that's a really important aspect that we could get into in another video. But for now, let's focus on the actual base of a character. So let's compare Remon's head size. Oh, okay, I did that wrong. Let me get a smaller brush and lower the opacity. Okay, so let's compare Remon's head size, which is like, I'm gonna say around this much. And like, also take into consideration the face structure. The eyes are like huge compared to the head, but that's a really good stylistic aspect. You can see that the neck is, I guess, the proportions of the neck aren't as like exaggerated. I wonder if they are for other characters. You can't even see his neck. Yeah, the proportions of the neck are not as exaggerated as the rest of the body is. The ears, I'm guessing, are around over here. So, like many anatomical aspects, the ears are like, they start at the top of the eyes and near the nose, you know, basic stuff. Anyways, so even though the clothes are pretty baggy, according to the folds and creases, you can kind of tell what parts, like where the base of the body is. So I'm gonna guess like over here it's a lot more tighter. And the legs, see. Okay, so they probably meet somewhere over here. I'm gonna say that's the torso. We got like the base of the body down, the upper thigh, and then the knees. Now, if you look at the legs, they're very stylized. Like the legs and arms in the Gachiakuta style is very stylized compared to a lot of the other body parts. And that's something you can really take into consideration, like not just for Remlin, but for Amo as well, and many other characters. The legs are very stylized and kind of wonky, which adds to the flair. You see this curve, the legs are like curved, which, you know. Shoes, I don't know. Their shoes are always like huge. I guess his are not, but yeah, never mind. Let's get back into the shoes. So the sole of the shoe is over here, so I'm guessing the foot is probably like along the lines, something like that. Of course, like when we're looking at the base of a character, we can only make guesses when the clothing is so baggy, but it's a really good help, you know? And now, just like the legs, I'd say the arms are pretty stylized as well. You can see something I've noticed in most of the arms, they have like, they're of course really skinny, but they also have like the noticeable elbows. I don't know how else to put that, but if we were to trace over, okay, that was really bad. So the elbows like around here. The hands are a lot bigger than, yeah, around the same, maybe a little smaller than the head, but the hands are pretty big. His aren't, so that is probably a style consideration for the character. See, yeah, around the same size. So that is a style consideration to be put. into consideration. So the overall base alone looks really wonky, which is why the baggy clothes really helps a bit. So like if I outlined the shape of the clothes, I guess, that would really help with the uncanny feeling it currently gives. Just something rough, you know? Not gonna go too much into detail right now, but... And that looks a lot more appealing than it did when it was just a bare base. But the base itself is supposed to give us a good, like, every illustration, every character illustration starts with the base itself, unless you're like super talented or like a psychopath, I guess. But every basic character illustration starts with the base. So the proportions of the base is something to take into consideration a lot. Another aspect of all the characters that I've seen is that their waists are pretty small in Gachiakuta. The head to body proportions, like let's take a look at Zanka. Oh, this is terrible. See, here's enlarge it. Yeah, I think that's around his proportion of his head. This is his head, right? Let's see how many heads you can fit in his torso. 1, 2. Okay. So for the more lean characters, their torsos are like a big part of his silhouette, you know? So that's something to look out for. 2 heads in a torso. How much? Just a curious wonder. Let me see. How much heads could fit in a whole body? 2, 4. 6. Around like 8-ish, I guess. Not too bad. So that's like the proportions. Yeah, over here as well, you can see his head is very round compared to very big and round compared to the rest of the body. So, yeah. Now, this art style does take like a lot of liberties when it comes to proportions in order to portray the personality of different characters through the character design. There are similarities that can be taken into consideration for each of the characters, which include rounded faces, unsimplified necks, I don't know how to put that one, slim waist, very stylized legs and arms, and their hands, relative to their heads and bodies, are rather large. So that's something you could be taken into consideration. Now, with all of those aspects that we study, let's try to create a base of our own. Now that we have our really roughly done base, I chose some references from the manga and a reference of Rio, so then I could go over this base to give it more of an actual Gachiakuta feel. And the manga references are in order to actually capture Kei Urana's art style. Oh, I forgot I did this. So I also, if you were watching the speed paint, I was also comparing like the proportion sizes as I drew, which is really helpful. So that's something I recommend doing. So let's get into outlining it. So the characters have really round faces, like I guess Zanka too. Like even his face is pretty round for most of the animes I've watched. So we could go in with that. Let me find a good pen that'll mimic the style first, and I'll get back to you. And luckily for me, I did in fact find one. It's a default pen in Clip Studio Paint called the Rough Pen. So we can start outlining using that. For the face, as I said, we're going to try to make it very round and also take into notice, in the manga at least, the faces don't seem to fully finish. But that might just be these few references, and we should also take into consideration the shadows as well. And there we have our finished base from the study. You might notice that I didn't add in face, and the hands and feet are very, very simplified and rough. That's because those aspects deserve a video of their own. So if you found this helpful or you're looking forward to other ways to perfect the Gachiakuta art style, stay tuned.